Everyone, I welcome you all to this video. And in the last session, we have discussed about some of the DAX functions. In this video, we will discuss about some of the functions. We will basically discuss about aggregate functions. So let's talk about that. We will be using some of the functions as well, which are not aggregate functions. We'll be using filter function or function like these. We'll be using different functions as well, which are not aggregate functions. But in order to explain the aggregate functions, other aggregate functions, we will be using these functions as well. So majorly, we will be talking about aggregate functions in this video. So let's begin with the discussion. First of all, this is the data that we created. Okay, so for this data, we have different columns. We have weekday, month number, week num. So it was basically a calendar table that we created. And we added some other columns later. So that's fine. But now let's go back to the report view. And let's say this time we are interested in finding out the sum of the values in any one column. So we can use sum function for that, which is an aggregate function. So I'll simply right click on date table. And in the last video, we have discussed about creating a table and creating certain columns using DAX. In this video, we will now start our discussion with creating different measures using DAX. So I will simply click on new measure. And in this measure, we further want to represent the sum of the values in, let's say, the length column. So I will name this function as sum function. In place of function, I'm writing fun. So sum function. And let's say we want to represent the sum of the values in our, further reduce the size maybe. Yes, we want to represent the sum of the values in, let's say, length function. So I can simply write length and it will show you the name of the column that you can use. Simply press tab key and close the bracket, press enter. So here you can see that sum function has been created. In the data pane, you can see this. Now, let's say in the data pane, the value we have this measure, that is sum function, and we want to represent the value that is contained in the sum function measure. So I will simply first of all click here on the blank area in the canvas, and then I'll expand the visualizations pane. So far, we do not need this filters pane. So under the view tab, I will unselect this filters option. So it is gone now. And again, I'll click on the blank area on the canvas and I will click here on this card visual. So you can see that it has created a blank card for us. Now, let's say on this card, we want to represent the sum of the values in the length function column. So I will simply select this box from here. And you can see that some of the values contained in this function, that is sum function, or this measure in which sum function was used, is being represented. So let's say we further want to format this card visual. So having this card visual selected, I will simply click on format your visual, general, effects, and I'll change this visual border to on. I'll again click on add data to your visual. So that's all. Now, as of now, you can see that this measure resides in date table, which is present under the data pane here, but we want this sum function measure. It is a measure. Sum function is a measure. We want this to reside in a measures table, in a separate table that is named measures table. So we can change the home table, but before that, we should be having a measures table. So I will simply click on home tab, and then I will simply click on enter data. We will not input any data here in the column 1, but we will rename this table from this bottom. Here you can see that table is written. So I'll rename it as measures table. And I'll click on load. It might take some time, all right, for this table to be created. So, all right, so this is the table that you can see. Measures table has been created. And since we want to change the home table for sum function measures, so having this sum function measure selected under the data pane, I'll click here on this function, right? I'll click on it again. So here you can see that there is something called home table. You can change the home table from here. And let's say we want to keep it measures table. So we can change the home table from here. And you can now see that the sum function moved to measures table. So we will further collapse the state table. And from this measures table, we will delete this column 1 because this is not needed. So we can simply select this delete from model and this column will be deleted. So this measures table now consists of this measure only. Now we will be adding other measures to this measures table only, and it is a good practice to create a measures table because at times your model will be consisting of multiple tables and you will be creating multiple measures. So you should keep them in separate tables for identifying them easily, right? So for that purpose, we are doing this. And now let's say there's a condition that we want to find the sum of the values in the length function column, but we want to do that only and only for December month. So that can be achieved using SUMX function. Now let's see how that can be achieved. So I'll further right click on this measures table and I'll simply click on new measure. And all right, and further expand it from here. And let's name this measure as SUMX measure. SUMX function, SUMX. So I'll write SUMX fun. It represents nothing but SUMX function. And the function that we are going to use is SUMX. Press tab key. Now I will be further using filter function inside this. So I'll write filter. Inside the filter function, you need to provide the name of the table since we are going to use date tables. So single quote, and this will show you the names of the tables available. Since you can see this date table highlighted in blue color, so it means it is selected. Press tab key, and now the name will be entered in the argument, comma. Now you need to provide the filter expression since we want the month to be December. So we can write month short name. So I'll simply type month and it will show you various options or column names that you can use. So I want to use month short name. Having this selected, I'll press the tab key, and this should be equal to nothing but in the double quotes you need to write DEC because this is the code for December. Close the filter function, comma. Now you need to provide the name of the column for which you want the sum. So we want the sum of the values for length function column. So we can simply write length, and it will show you the names of different columns that you can use. So we can use length function column from date table. Select that, press tab key, close the bracket, SUMX function will be closed, and press enter. Let's collapse this formula bar. And now let's say we want to represent the value contained in SUMX function using a card visual. So I will simply click here on this card visual that is already present. Control C, Control V, move the second card visual, let's say here. And we will remove this sum function from this second card that we have created. And now we will simply click here on this box before the SUMX function. And this now represents the value contained in SUMX function. And obviously the value represented by SUMX function should be less than that of sum function because for SUMX function, we have applied a filter of December month. So that can be seen here. Now let's discuss about one more example wherein we want to discuss about, let's say min and min x function. So let's say we want to find out the minimum value from the length function column. So in the measures table, I'll right click and I'll simply click on new measure. Since we will further expand this. All right. And since we want to use minimum function to find out the minimum value from a column, so I'll name it as min fun, that is minimum function. And then I'll write minimum on the right hand side after equal to and press tab key, select this function and simply provide the column name. So the column that we are going to use is nothing but your length function column. So length function, select this, close the bracket, press enter, collapse this formula bar, click here on the blank area on the canvas, click on SUMX function card visual, Control C, Control V, move the new card visual here, and from the fields bucket, remove this SUMX function, and now just simply click here on this min function under the data pane, and this represents the minimum value. All right, from the length function column. Now, let's say we want to find out the minimum value only for December month. So I will right click on measures table, new measure. For that purpose, we will be using minx function. So I will further expand this. And here I will write minx function. On the right hand side, we will write minx, press tab key. And now you need to provide the name of the column. So before here in this case, we want to find out the minimum value from the length column only for December month. So first of all, we will use filter function inside minx function. So I'll write filter, press tab key, name of the table, single quote, date table, comma, the filter expression is that month short name should be equal to nothing but December, That is, the code for this is DEC. So inside the double quotes DEC, then close the bracket in order to close filter function, comma. Now provide the name of the column for which you want to find out the minimum value. So we want the minimum value for length function. We'll select that, close the bracket and close the min-x function, press enter. All right, so this min-x function will now consist of minimum value for length function column for December month. Click here on the blank area on canvas. First of all, collapse this. Click here on the blank area on canvas. Now simply select this min function from the canvas. Min function card visual. Select this. Control C, Control V. Move the second card visual here. Remove this min function from the fields bucket and simply select min-x function under the data pane. And this will show you the minimum value contained in the length function column for December month. Now let's say we want to find out the maximum value from the length function column. So I will again simply right click on this measures table, new measure. I will further expand this. The manner in which we have used other aggregate functions. Similarly, we can use max function. Let's name it as max fun. It represents max function. Now let's write max, press tab key, and now simply provide the name of the column for which you want to find out the maximum value. So I'll simply write length function. All right. Yes. So this is the function this is the column that we have. That in the date table we have length function column. Press tab key, close the bracket, press enter. Further collapse this formula bar. Click on the blank area on the canvas. Click on the card visual, min-x function card visual, Control C, Control V. Move it here. Move the newly created card visual here. And then remove this min-x function from the fields bucket under the visualizations pane. Now simply click on your max function under the data pane, and you will see that it represents the maximum value from the length function column. Now again, let's say we want to find out the maximum value from the length function column, or maybe some other column. Let's take a month number column this time. So let's say we want to find out the maximum value from the month number column for 2 months out of 2 months, that is for January and November. So I'll simply right click on this measures table, then I'll click on new measure. I will expand this formula bar. Here we will write max x because we will be using max x to achieve that max x function. So I will name it as max x fun. That represents nothing but max x function. Simply write max x on the right hand side, press tab key. Inside this max x function, we will be using filter function. So simply write filter, use that function. Now provide the name of the table, single quote. We are going to use date table. So simply select that from here, comma. Since we have to choose between the months January and November, so I will be using OR function inside this. So we will write OR. This is a logical function that is being used. OR is not an aggregate function. Press tab key. Now provide the logics that you have. So we want the month short name to be either January. In the double quotes, you can write January, comma. Provide the name of next month, that is November. So I'll simply write month. It will show you various options that you can choose from. So month short name equal to, we have chosen January. Now we want November also to be chosen. Double quote, close the bracket, comma. All right. We have closed the OR function. Now we need to close the filter function. So we'll close the filter function. Now, comma. We need to provide the name of the column for which we want the maximum value to be chosen from. So let's say we want the maximum value from month number column. So I will simply write month, and this is the column that we want to use here. We'll close the bracket. In this manner, we will close the maxx function, press enter, and then we'll simply collapse this maxx function. I will simply click here on the blank area on the canvas, click on maxx function card visual that is available on this report area. Control C, Control V, move the newly created card visual here below sum function. Then remove this max function field under the fields bucket, and then simply click on maxx function under the data pane. and this represents the maximum value, right? So obviously, if we are talking about month number, so for January, the month number will be 1. For November, the month number will be 11. So obviously, since 11 is greater than 1, so 11 is being represented here in maxx function. Similarly, we can discuss about other aggregate functions, and we will be taking similar examples. Let's consider, you can fast forward the video from here, but we are going to discuss about different aggregate functions, right? But we will be taking similar examples. So we will now discuss about average and average x function. So I'll simply click here on the measures table, new measure. It might take some time. Expand this formula bar. Let's say the function that we now want to discuss is average function. So I'll write average fun, and then I'll write average, press tab key. And let's say we want to find out the average of the values from month number column. So I'll simply select month number from here, press tab key, close the bracket, press enter. Further collapse this formula bar, click anywhere on the blanket on the canvas, select this maxx function card visual, Control C, Control V, move the newly created card visual here, and remove this maxx function from this fields bucket, and simply select this average function under this data pane, and this represents the average of the values contained in month number column. Similarly, let's say we want to find out the average of only those values from the month number column where we have month either equal to December or November. So I will simply right click on the measures table, new measure, and then we'll further expand this. All right, and we will name it as average x function, and we will simply write average x, press tab key, and now inside this we'll be using filter function again, so filter, and then we have to provide the name of the table that we are going to use. So we are going to use date table, so single quote, select this date table, comma, or function, press tab key. We want the month to be either November or December, so we will write month short name to be equal to, in the double quotes, maybe December, then comma, second logic, that is the month short name should be equal to maybe December and November, double quotes, close the OR function, close the filter function, comma. Now provide the name of the month number column, because for that column only we want the average to be calculated. Press tab key, close the bracket, close the average x function, press enter. Now collapse this formula bar, click on the blank area on the canvas, select your average x function card visual, Control C, Control V, simply move it here, remove the average function from this fields bucket, and simply select your average x function. Obviously for November the value was equal to 11, and for December the value was equal to 12, so the average is 11.51, right? So that's all that we had to discuss about these functions. Let's discuss about some other aggregate functions. So similarly, we have product x and count x functions. So let's talk about those functions as well. So first of all, let's talk about count and count x. So I will simply right click on measures table, new measure, further expand this formula bar. First of all, let's talk about count function. Count function, let's say we want to count values in let's say month short name column. So we can simply use count function. We can write count, press tab key, and then simply provide the name of the column, so single quote, and then you can simply choose from here. So month short name is the column that we want to select, close the bracket, press enter, simply collapse it, press click here on the blank area on the canvas, then simply select your average x function card visual from the report design area, Control C, Control V, simply move the newly created card here, remove this average x function from the fields bucket, and simply select your count function. So we are having a total of 366 values in your month short name column, right? So that's why the count is equal to 366. We add the date values from 1st January 2022 to 1st January 2023. Now let's discuss about count X function. So I will simply right click on this measures table and then new measure. All right. So we will simply expand this formula bar, and here we can simply write that we want to use count X function. So count X, and then inside this we will be using a filter function again. So filter, you need to provide the name of the table. So date table is the table that we are going to use, single quote, and provide the name of the table. Then comma, here we want the count to be calculated only for those cases where your month short name is either equal to, let's say, January or December. So we'll simply select month short name should be either equal to your January, or your month short name should be equal to December. Then close the or function, close the filter function, comma, provide the name of the column for which you want the count to be calculated. So let's say we want the count to be calculated for month number column. So I will simply write month, and you can select from here month number, press tab key, and close your count X function, press enter. So I will further collapse this formula bar. I'll click here on the blank area on the canvas, click on the count function card visual present in the report design area, Control C, Control V, move the next card visual here, newly created card visual here, remove this count function from here, and simply select your count X function. So we didn't rename it. So we can rename it from here as well. Double click this measure and name it as count X function. All right. And now since we want to represent this count X function's value here in this newly created blank card visual, so I'll simply click here on count X function, and this shows you the total count for the months January or December, maybe. Yes, January and December. Now again, click on the blank area on the canvas. Now there are two other functions that we want to discuss as a part of your aggregate function. So I'll simply right click on measures table and new measure. Let's say we want to find out the product of the values present in the month number column. So I'll further expand this, and then I will simply, in place of measure, I'll write product function, and then we'll say product. Select this function, and then you need to provide the name of the column. So month number is the column that we are going to use. So month number, press tab key, close the bracket, press enter. Further collapse it, click here on the blank area on the canvas, select any card visual, Control C, Control V, move the newly created card visual here, and remove this count X function from here, and simply select your product function. So this shows nothing but the total product. All right. So you can see that this is the product that you have, right? Since we had a large number of values. Again, let's talk about, let's say we are interested in finding out the product of the values from the month number column only when the month is equal to January, right? So either January maybe, or we can only take 1 month also. So I'll just simply right click on measures table, new measure. So for the purpose, we can use product X function. So in place of measure, I will name the new measure as product X function, and we can write product X, press tab key. Inside this, we'll be using filter function. Similarly, use the filter function. Then the table that we are going to use is the date table, comma, we want the month to be January, so we can provide month short name as Jan. Close your filter function, comma, provide the name of the column of which you want the product to be there. So month number is the column. I'll write month, then I'll select month number column, press tab key, close the product X function, press enter. And then you can further collapse this formula bar. Now simply click here on the blank area on the canvas, select your product X function card visual, Control C, Control V, simply move the newly created card here on the right hand side. And let's remove this product function from the fields bucket, and let's place product X function here. So obviously the product should be equal to 1 because for January, your value for month number will be equal to 1. So even if you'll multiply 1 to itself n times, the product is always going to be 1. So that's all. So we have the following aggregate functions that you can see here in the measures table, right? Filter function and OR function are not aggregate functions, but all these functions that you can see here in the measures table are aggregate functions. These are some of the aggregate functions that we have discussed. I hope this video was helpful. We'll meet in the next session. We will discuss about more important DAX functions. Till then, thank you. Bye-bye.